I don't live a particularly exciting life, but whenever someone asks me for a scary story, this is the one I always tell. I was 15 at the time, about to start my sophomore year of high school. I grew up in a typical beach town, packed with tourists in the summer, and practically a ghost town as soon as the season ended. Once the crowds cleared out, the bars and restaurants would shut down, leaving behind only the locals, the sky, and the ocean. If you've never been to the shore, during the off-season, I highly recommend it. It's one of the strangest yet most calming feelings you can experience. As cliché as it sounds, it feels like the world just pauses. Our house was on a street called Surf Avenue, just a block from the beach. Funny enough, I actually do know how to surf. It would have been pretty embarrassing otherwise, considering where we lived. I'd grown up there, so the boardwalk and the sand were second nature to me. They weren't just part of my routine. They were part of who I was. We don't live in that house anymore, but it's still in the family, and it still feels like a part of me. At the time, I was on my high school's varsity cross-country team, and I was obsessed with staying in shape, even during the off-season. Summers down the shore get brutally hot, so I usually ran either early in the morning or late at night. That way, I avoided the heat and the guilt of annoying people by weaving around them. One night I went out for a late run. I'd stayed up with friends the night before and slept in that morning, so I didn't really have a choice if I wanted to get a workout in. I never brought my phone while running. No music, no distractions. Even the smallest bit of weight felt like it threw me off. I used a small Garmin watch to track distance and pace. Besides that, I only carried my house keys, jammed into the pocket of my running shorts. My parents were incredibly uptight about locking up. It didn't matter if they were home or not. The keys had to be on me. No exceptions. I never understood why they were so paranoid. Our beach town was ridiculously safe, but rules were rules. That night I stuck to the boardwalk. The surface was forgiving on my legs, softer than concrete, but not as exhausting as running on sand. Sometimes I'd challenge myself with a beach run, but not after the kind of day I'd had. I just wanted a long, easy stretch with no surprises. After a few miles, I hit that perfect rhythm, the kind where your brain goes quiet and you forget you're even running. I always tell people, if you can push through the first mental block around mile 3, the rest of the run starts to feel peaceful. I was in that zone, listening to the slap of my shoes against the wood and the distant crash of waves, when I heard a faint clink. I stopped. My heart sank. I reached into my pocket. Empty. My keys. I crouched down and tried to peer through the gaps in the boardwalk, but it was useless. Pitch black under there. No chance of spotting anything. I cursed out loudly, frustration boiling over. The adrenaline from the run didn't help. I knew my parents would lose their minds if I came home without those keys. And honestly, I wasn't about to leave them behind anyway. It wasn't just fear, it was pride. Who just leaves their stuff? Without thinking, I hopped off the side of the boardwalk and made my way onto the sand. The smell hit me instantly, like rotting seaweed and stale beer. Imagine filling a bathtub with both and letting it ferment. Every step kicked up trash and damp sand. I didn't have my phone, so the tiny backlight on my Garmin watch was my only guide. I crawled toward the spot I thought the keys had fallen, but there was nothing. Just more sand, trash, and disappointment. Still, I wasn't giving up. I started digging around, shifting sand, convinced they had just sunk a little. But after a few minutes, I started doubting myself. Had I really misjudged the spot that badly? I climbed back onto the boardwalk, stood exactly where I'd stopped running, and tried to mentally mark the location. That's when I had an idea. Weird, but clever. I untied one of my shoelaces and fed it down between the planks. It hung straight down, a marker I could see from underneath. But as I stood back up, the lace disappeared, yanked downward. It wasn't wind. It wasn't me. Someone had pulled it. I froze, staring at the gap in disbelief. Someone was under there, and if they had my shoelace, they probably had my keys too. My instinct said to run home and deal with it later. But my keys had my house address etched into them. The thought of a stranger having that, knowing exactly where I lived, made my blood run cold. Call it teenage confidence or just stupidity, but I jumped back down and crawled underneath again. This time it felt different. The air was thick, tense, like it knew I was there. Then I heard it, faint, shuffling ahead of me. I whipped my watch toward the sound. Nothing. More shuffling, but this time, behind me, then to the side. That's when I realized the sound wasn't coming from one direction. There were multiple people under there. My brain finally kicked into gear. What the hell was I thinking? Was I planning to fight some random group of people camped out under a boardwalk? I turned to crawl out, fast. But before I could, something cold clamped around my ankle. A hand. I screamed. Fingernails dug into my skin. I kicked, hard, and my foot connected with something soft and solid. The grip loosened. I scrambled out, arms and legs scraping against beams and sand until I was back in the open. Then I ran. I sprinted all the way home, didn't stop once. When I reached the front door, I pounded on it until my dad opened up. He was furious, rightfully so. But before he could unload on me, I started rambling. The keys, the shoelace, the people under the boardwalk. My mom came downstairs angry, at first, but when she saw the marks on my ankle, her face changed. Fear. My dad called the cops. We had all the locks changed the next morning. For a couple of days, things felt normal again. I told myself it was just some weird, messed up night. But a few mornings later, I woke up to loud knocking at the front door. It was early. Way too early. I waited for my parents to answer, but they didn't. So I got up, threw on a hoodie, and went downstairs. I looked through the peephole. No one. I opened the door. Empty street. No people. No cars. But just as I was about to close it, something caught my eye. Sitting on the doormat was a single shoelace. My shoelace. The one from that night. I slammed the door and locked it without a second thought. That afternoon, we got a full security system installed. For weeks afterward, we lived on edge. But nothing ever happened. Even now, years later, I still think about it sometimes. I don't live in that house anymore, but it creeps me out to know someone out there. Some stranger still knows exactly where our beach house is. The thing about living in a beach town during the off-season is that it feels abandoned. The tourists are long gone, storefronts boarded up, and the boardwalk, the very soul of summer, is nothing more than a hollow skeleton of its former self. But I like it that way. It's peaceful. That's why, for the longest time, I'd go for late-night runs on the boardwalk when no one else was around. It was my escape, a detox from life and all the noise it brings. Sometimes, you just need to disappear from the world for a little while. There was something about the crashing of waves, the rhythmic slap of my sneakers against the wooden planks. It was calming. In those moments, it felt like the whole world was mine. Tonight was no different. The air was crisp, thick with the scent of salt and damp wood. Street lamps, scattered here and there, buzzed faintly, casting long, lonely shadows. About a mile in, I got that feeling. You know the one, where every hair stands. Up in your gut whispers, you're not alone. I glanced over my shoulder. A man stood in the distance, not walking, not moving, just standing there, facing me. I swallowed hard and turned back, brushing it off. Probably just another local out for some fresh air. Still, no matter how you slice, that's a creepy thing to see alone at night. I kept running, but soon, that uneasy feeling came back, stronger, like I was being followed or watched. My heart pounded, not from the run, but from something deeper, a primal kind of fear. Turned again. He was closer now, still motionless, still staring. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I picked up my pace, yanking out my lone earbud. My breath quickened. My feet slammed the wood harder. Then, footsteps. Behind me, in sync with mine. I turned again. Closer. Always closer. Yet still unmoving. That's when I broke into a full sprint. But suddenly, that familiar boardwalk felt endless, like a trap. My car was parked at the far end, near the beach entrance. I just had to make it there. I ran harder than I ever had. Lungs burning, legs screaming. I glanced back. He was closer. Every single time. Never. Walking, just there, watching. How was he moving without me seeing it? How did he stop so fast? None of it made sense. The exit came into view. My car. Finally, I fumbled for my keys, hands trembling, dropped them. Picked them up, pressed the unlock button, click. The lights flashed. I dove inside, slammed the door shut, started the engine, and threw it in reverse. I yanked the wheel, ready to get the hell out of there. That's when I looked up. He was standing, right where my car had just been, right in front of me. I barely saw his face, just the hood pulled low, shrouding his features. I didn't wait. Spun the wheel, hit the gas. I didn't care if I ran red lights, didn't care if I swerved, didn't look back. Once I was home, I locked every door, every window, every entrance. I didn't sleep. And in the weeks that followed, I had nightmares. In every one, that man, or whatever he was, appeared, always watching, sometimes chasing. My mind made up faces for him, all of them worse than the last, because truthfully, I never really saw his. I haven't run on the boardwalk since. Last summer, I was 22 and spending a weekend at the shore with a group of friends. We had squeezed into the cheapest Airbnb we could find. It was our final night there. We'd been out on the beach all night, bonfire crackling, beers in hand, everyone just vibing and talking. Nothing too wild. Eventually, most of my friends called it a night, but I wasn't ready to crash just yet. I decided to take a solo walk and clear my head a bit before heading back. There's something strangely peaceful about the boardwalk at night. So quiet, so empty. I haven't spent much time by the beach before, so it all felt fresh and kind, of magical. After wandering a while, I realized I really had to pee. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who can just go in public. My friends tease me about that all the time. So this was a bit of a dilemma. That's when I saw it. An old, dingy public bathroom just off the boardwalk. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned properly in years. The lighting was awful, the paint was peeling, and the stench was an aggressive mix of bleach and something it couldn't quite cover up. Still, I figured I'd make it quick. I headed to the farthest stall. Just as I was finishing up, I heard the main door creak open. I froze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving around the bathroom like they were circling. What made it worse was the sound seemed to shift directions, like more than one person, but I couldn't be sure. Then, the steps stopped. Near the sinks, no movement, no sound, not even the water running. Just silence. I hurried to leave, but when I tried to push open the stall door, it wouldn't budge. I jiggled the latch. Nothing. Felt that rising heat of panic in my chest. and then the footsteps started again. Closer this time. That's when I felt it. Someone holding the door shut. I shoved hard with my shoulder, still stuck. Adrenaline kicked in. I wasn't going to sit there like some helpless target. I threw my full weight at the door and it finally gave, sending me stumbling into the now empty bathroom. Except, right as I came out, I saw the main door slowly swinging shut. Whoever had been in there was gone. I quickly washed my hands, trying to keep my cool, and went to leave. But the door wouldn't open. The handle didn't even turn. Locked. From the outside, my heart was pounding. Was this a prank? One of my friends? No. They had no idea where I'd gone, and this didn't feel like them. I started banging on the door, yelling for help. Nothing. Then, behind me, I heard movement from one of the stalls. I turned, no feet visible under any of the doors. Someone was in there, standing on the toilet. There had been 2 people in that bathroom. I felt sick. I glanced up, spotted a grimy little window high above the sinks. It wasn't big, but it was my only shot. I climbed up onto the sink. It creaked and wobbled, like it might collapse, and shoved the window open. Just as I was halfway through, one of the stall doors slammed open behind me. I looked back and locked eyes with him. A man, pale, hairy, dressed like a teenager, but he had to be at least 50. His eyes were wide, blank. I didn't wait. I scrambled through the window and dropped onto the boardwalk, smashing my knee but not caring. I ran. Once I was a good distance away, I called the cops. They arrived quickly. Beach town, small force. But by the time they checked the bathroom, the guy was gone. Vanished. The place was deserted. No shops open, no security cams. Nothing to trace. One officer pointed to scratch marks around the bathroom door handle, said it looked like someone had tampered with it. We all knew what that meant. Whoever that was didn't want me leaving. But else. Cops told me I was smart to get out through the window. That was it. I left the beach the next morning. Never heard anything back. I doubt they ever really followed up. But I know what I saw, and I'll never forget the look in that man's eyes. Anyway, I'm sorry in advance if I mess up some details. This all happened when I was really young. I don't remember exactly how old I was, maybe 8 or 9. But I know it was during one of those summers my family spent at my grandparents' beach house. That place was like the family hub. Every summer, my siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, we'd all pile in for weekends or entire weeks. The house wasn't fancy, but it had 1 million bedrooms and could easily sleep everyone. It was super close to the beach too. I'd spend entire days playing in the sand or biking around the neighborhood. Every summer there felt like a dream. Even now, it all blurs together in this nostalgic, fever dream kind of way. But that summer felt different. There was a hurricane, forecasted, some big one everyone was nervous about. The whole town started prepping months in advance. I don't know if other beach towns did this, but ours built these giant sand dunes along the shore, like temporary barriers. Calling them dunes almost feels wrong. They were massive. To a kid, they looked like castle walls. I bet the aerial view of the beach that summer looked absolutely wild. My siblings and I would spend hours climbing those dunes, tumbling down. The other side, pretending we were storming a fortress or hiking some huge mountain. But it was weird too. Normally, if you stood on the boardwalk, you could see the ocean stretching endlessly ahead. But that summer, nothing but a massive wall of sand. They started closing the beach after a certain hour. Lifeguards would leave, and technically no one was allowed on it. But that never really stopped the locals. Our town was safe, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Letting kids roam around wasn't a big deal. As long as we promised not to go into the ocean, our parents didn't mind much. To be honest, I was kind of a little troublemaker back then. I liked pushing boundaries, especially if I thought I could get away with it. That's what led me to sneak out one evening. It wasn't even dark yet. The sun hadn't started to set, but I didn't ask permission. I think I'd gotten into a fight with one of my brothers, though I don't remember exactly. All I knew was that I wanted some time alone. The sliding door downstairs, near all the kids' rooms, made it easy to slip in and out unnoticed. My older cousins had practically written the rule book on sneaking around, usually for way more rebellious stuff than a solo beach walk, but I'd learned from the best. Even today, we still laugh about how easy it was to sneak in and out without ever alerting the adults. Anyway, I crept out quietly, barefoot, not even bothering to put on shoes, and made my way toward the boardwalk. I expected to see a few people out. Locals, maybe some kids my age. Even after beach hours, the place usually had a few stragglers hanging around. But that night, it was completely deserted. Not a single soul. The whole beach felt like it had fallen asleep. I wandered a bit, unsure why it was so empty. I was just about to turn back when I saw something strange, a thin trail of smoke rising from behind one of the dunes. At first, I thought it was fog, but as I got closer, I realized it was smoke, the kind that comes from a fire. Fires on the beach weren't totally unheard of. Sometimes tourists lit bonfires, even though it was against the rules, but there was something about the complete emptiness that made it feel off. The smoke looked wrong, like something out of a volcano, just seeping up from the sand. I looked around for an adult. Nothing. Just the empty boardwalk stretching out endlessly. I should have gone home. But curiosity got the better of me. My parents always told me to never turn my back on someone who might need help, and something about this felt like that. So I climbed the dune, not right where the smoke was coming from, but a little off to the side. I got covered in sand on the way up, but when I reached the top, I finally saw it. A bonfire, just sitting there, isolated in the middle of the beach. But no one was around. No chairs, no coolers, nothing. Just flames. Even as a kid, I knew that was dangerous. Leaving a fire unattended like that. I slid down the dune and approached it. I stood there for a second, unsure what to do. Then I started kicking sand onto it, over and over, until the flames finally died out. But I didn't leave. I couldn't. I was too curious. Why would someone light a fire and just leave? I poked around the ashes with a stick, and that's when I made the first disturbing discovery. Clothes. Kids' clothes. Shoes, socks, little shirts, like stuff I would have worn. Some of the fabric was half burned. Then I saw what else had been burning. Photographs. Most of them were totally charred, but one had survived enough to show a face. A boy, around my age, and the weirdest part? He kind of looked like me. Not exactly, but enough that if someone told me he was a distant cousin, I'd have believed them. That's when I got scared. Really scared. I felt the panic rise in my chest and dropped the stick. I wanted to run. Then I heard it, a voice, yelling, "Hey!" I looked up and saw a man coming toward me from down the beach. Bald. Staggering with every few steps like he was drunk. Or worse. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell something was off. He yelled again, "Hey, kid!" I couldn't move. I was frozen. Then he shouted, "Don't you go anywhere!" That snapped me out of it. Suddenly, I was sprinting toward the sand wall. The sand made it hard to run, but it felt like life or death. As I climbed the dune, I heard him yelling, screaming, obscenities now. He was getting closer. Just as I reached the top, I felt fingers swipe at my ankle. Fingernails, clawing. But somehow, he never got a grip. I hurled myself over the dune, tumbled all the way down, and ran like hell to the boardwalk. I didn't stop until I got home. I kept looking over my shoulder to see if he was following me, but he wasn't. When I finally made it to my bedroom, I just collapsed in tears. I wanted to tell my parents. I really did. But all I could think about was how I'd snuck out and how much trouble I'd be in. So I stayed quiet. Looking back, I know I should have said something, told someone. But I didn't. And nothing ever came of it. No news reports. No police at the beach the next day. No missing child alerts. Sometimes I wonder if it really happened. But I know it did. I felt it. What still freaks me out the most is how much that kid in the photo looked like me. Like he could have been me. And sometimes late at night, I still wonder if that fire was meant for someone like me.